Welcome to Needham School Spotlight. I'm Dan Goodykamst, Superintendent of Schools. I often tell our principals that student and school safety is job one. And it turns out that school and student safety is also a priority for our town manager, Kate Fitzpatrick, our fire chief, Dennis Condon, and police chief, John Schlittler, to talk to me about school and public safety. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
We were just joking a little bit that we've spent a lot of time together lately, Chief Condon, talking about school safety and public safety at different events across the state at Stonehill College, Westfield, was it at Westfield State?
Westfield
State, and then at the National Fire Protection Association. Student and school safety is something that's always, I know, on your mind and on your mind, Chief, and I certainly appreciate that. Kate, I think I'd actually like to begin with you with this conversation because the town just received this big award for fire safety. Can you just tell us what's the big piece about that?
That's right. The fire chief and his staff submitted an application to FEMA for a SAFER grant, and the federal government is giving us upwards of $1.6 million over 3 years to fund 5 new firefighters, which is going to be really helpful for us in what we're calling our year of public safety. This is our year of really focusing on public safety, both facilities and staffing. And the new 8 firefighters will help us both meet national standards for staffing in emergencies and also will allow us to run a full-time ambulance out of Station 2 at the corner of Highland and Webster, which is in our really growing area of town.
Right, everything on the other side of 128. And I understand you also respond on the highway if there are events, but correct, there's just a lot of activity over there now as the town is growing. Well, I thought maybe I would begin that we do often talk about student safety and school safety, and Chief Schlittler, maybe I'll begin with you. If you can share with us, as you think about this new year, some of the key activities and programs that we've tried to establish to ensure safety and security in our schools. I know there's several, but maybe if you could highlight a few of them.
Well, I think the first program that we worked with the schools to implement was the ALICE protocol, and that's our active threat response. And it's a coordinated effort between the schools and public safety. And it's a lockdown-based scenario. It's something that we train with the police department and the school staff. We do have a couple, 2 SROs, one that's assigned full-time to the high school. One just replaced, Adrian Anderson just replaced the legendary Vin Springer up here.
Who was in town for 30 years, I believe, as a police officer.
He was, and he spent several years at the high school as a school resource officer. And then we have another school resource officer, Ryan O'Leary, who works in between the middle schools and the elementary schools. And the SROs are important to public safety because they're the conduit between the school staff and the police staff, and they're able to do continuing education on a yearly basis on the ALICE protocol.
I just wanted, before you go on, just to remind folks, ALICE stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate.
That's correct.
And those are instructions for staff and students based on the scenario and the situation.
It is, and they're not in order, and
Yep.
it's all
Yep.
depending
Yep.
on the situation at hand. And one of the things when we started this was, this is a program that they can use in life. They're life lessons that the kids can take to college, or if they're out in the public area, the malls, the movie theaters, and so forth. So it's a practical tool that we use and that they can carry on in their future lives.
Well, and I hate, you're just saying that something that we're teaching them is a lifelong skill. That's not something 5 or 10 years ago we would have been talking about as a lifelong skill, but unfortunately and tragically there have been events, not just in schools, but in workplaces and in other places where it's something we do have to think about, and we have to plan for, and as you suggest, drill for. Just if we can, Chief Condon, I want to bring you into this piece about ALICE, because if we do have this, and we do have this protocol to counter a threat and to respond to a threat in our schools in the event, for example, of an active shooter, recently the fire department has been involved in that training with the police chief. It's not just a matter of talking about school safety or the police involvement, but you actually train at the high school, and last spring you trained with the fire department as part of the ASHA program, which is Active Shooter
Hostile Event
Response. What's that response, and how did the fire department get involved in responding to an active shooting event?
So we've seen throughout the fire service over the last 20 years since Columbine unfortunately, a lot of these events nationwide. And so the fire service has been stuck outside with their EMS stuff until the hot zone is cooled off and police allow us in. So the new thinking now is this active shooter hostile event response, so that we can actually go in with ballistic gear on, vests, helmets, and so forth, and help stop the bleeding and help save lives before the event is over, or if the event is isolated in another area of the building. So we can get in quicker. And so last spring we trained with Needham Police here at Needham High School, and all 4 of our groups went through the training, and everybody thought it was a great success. And it's something that we will be doing ongoing as we move forward.
I happened to see some of the video of the training, and it was really pretty amazing. There were several students involved as students, but also as victims, unfortunately, and some staff, and to see how the police were coordinating so closely and tightly with fire, with ballistic gear on, and medics clearly identified, fire clearly identified, and police. It was pretty sobering, but it really underscores the close collaboration that both of your departments have in cooperation with the schools, which is, again, something that we do have to think about these days. Chief Condon, just to continuing a little bit, what are some other ways that the fire department works with the schools in promoting, for example, fire or student safety?
So we work with the schools from grade 1 on. Early years we do the SAFE program, which is student awareness of fire education, and we go over safety protocols and what the students, again, in lifelong things where they learn how to be safe around heating sources, fire, and so forth, and what to do if a fire does break out. We also work 4 times a year. We do fire drills, which isn't always maybe the best timing with weather and so forth, but it's very important. In our inspectors, when they come out, they're looking not just how quickly we get out of the building, but how safely and where people go. So we've, at various times, we find that people might be in an area of the building where they didn't get the notification, or they left doors open, or there's a bottleneck of getting out of a building, that we then readdress the plan, so that the idea is, if an event occurs, a fire in the schools, that people will be able to get out safely and quickly.
I am reminded of my own children and how, when they came back from the SAFE training in their schools, we certainly had, I was lectured to about the smoke detectors in the house were too old, and I had to test each one, and I had to go through all of that because they all of a sudden became aware of all these things, which was great. And I think that awareness, along with other aspects of the program, is terrific, and helps remind all of us about safety, even at home. And when we think about the tragedy that's happened in the Merrimack Valley, it's important. It's important to know what to do if there's an event or something's not right. Beyond the schools, you've also recently, in the last couple of years, had the Clear the Hydrant program, which has involved a lot of students. Well, tell us a little bit about that. Will that be happening again this year?
Yeah, that'll be happening again. The best part of the Clear Hydrant program is, once we instituted it, it seemed like snow stopped falling. So the first year, as you recall, about 3 years ago, it was we got pummeled with snow over the winter, and it became a real problem. Hydrants were covered up, and so one of our firefighters, Rob Giametti, came up with the idea of, let's start a program and get kids and people involved. And so we've done it now. This will be the 3rd year in a row that we've done it. And people can sign up. They can adopt a hydrant, so to speak, by their house. And what they do is just make sure that's cleared after each storm. And there's plenty of room for the firefighters to be able to hook up a hose if necessary. And at the end of the year, we have a little party, a pizza party at the fire station, give everyone a little gift, and we have a drawing for a ride to school in the fire truck. So it's
which I've yet to win, by the way, and I expect to one of these days. Because
well, keep shoveling that hydrant.
I try. I help my neighbor. As we're having this conversation, Kate, you know, I know that you meet regularly with both chiefs, and you know, more than weekly, I imagine. What are some things that are on your mind when you think about public safety and school safety in Needham? And I'm actually curious to know how it compares to your experience with other towns and what their experience is with these different agencies and departments working together.
That's right. So I think that it's fair to say that many people list public safety and the public education as the reasons they move to Needham, the reasons they love it. We do a biennial survey, and 98% of residents rate Needham as a place to live as good or excellent, and they rate their fire and police services in the 98 to 99% range. The education is closely follows public safety. So these are really important issues for our residents, and some of the things that we've been working on lately actually is a focus on pedestrian safety, and that involves our business community, our residents, and also our schools, because the school zones are obviously highly congregated with pedestrians, as is the business district. So we've actually hired a consultant to do an audit of all of our intersections, our crosswalks, and signage, and to make recommendations for moving forward where should we be investing some of our funds. Our state rep, Denise Garlick, was able to secure a couple $100,000 in the state budget this year for us to implement some of these initiatives. So we'll be, in the very near future, putting in some more obvious flashing signs that maybe will get people's attention. And we've actually started a heads-up campaign where we're really trying to focus residents' notice on not being distracted, not driving, looking at a phone for any reason, and also to watch out for people in crosswalks.
Well, just the heads up, actually, as you say it, it's making sure that people driving are not texting or looking at their phone or searching on their map, but they're keeping their heads up. But it's also true for pedestrians.
That's right.
Because there are a lot of young people who walk around town or walk around and they've got their head down looking at their screen. So it's for both,
It's for
the
both.
driver and the pedestrian.
Right. So we'll be seeing some of our new images that we've created for that campaign popping up around town, just to get people reminded. Yeah.
I would imagine that pedestrian safety keeps you busy. I think you told me once that there are about 64, 65 crossing guard areas. Is that correct in town?
That's correct. We cover approximately 64 crossings a day for the schools. And obviously it is a concern of ours, and it's something that we do our directed patrol with our traffic officers. And I've said before, we stop around 8,000 cars a year, but we do have
Well, you
target
stop say a little bit more about that. You stop 8,000 cars a year.
for motor vehicle stops for any violation, but we
Okay.
do directed patrols around crosswalks and distracted driving. A lot of times we'll use motorcycles, and we'll have officers in plain clothes that'll be at a crosswalk or be in a certain area, and they'll radio ahead to cars, the motorcycles, when they see the violations, and then the motorcycles will pull the cars over. So we've tried to target the distracted driving and the crosswalk violations and overall pedestrian safety, and it's something we'll continue to do.
Well, and besides the cars and the motorcycles, you also have some officers on bicycles.
We do a
and,
mountain bike.
The mountain bike, and they're around town. And I think from where I sit and what I observe, as I did, for example, at the football game last Friday evening, that interaction between the officer and students or families is really important. It builds that sense of community policing. And Chief Condon, I wanted to remind you of something that happened last year. I'm thinking about now, that same interaction with young people. There was a fire alarm accidentally pulled at one of our schools last year, an elementary school, by a student who was new to the country, and a little guy. And the shock on the student's face when he realized what was happening, and when the school was emptying out and fire was arriving, it could have been an opportunity to really be upset with and scold or even punish the student. Instead, the fire department, or those who responded, took advantage of that to make it a learning opportunity, and as I understand it, invited the student in to see what the fire truck was all about and to talk about what that fire alarm does, because this is an unfamiliar system, if you will, for this particular student in his home country. And that was great. I mean, that speaks to what both of you are encouraging in your departments with your members to really think about we all provide a service to the community, but we also need to interact with people, in this case young people, and try to teach them lessons and help them learn rather than punish and,
Right.
and scold and all that. Chief, I frequently get questions about the memorandum of understanding between my office and your office. The goal of the memo, the MOU, is to really detail our relationship as police chief and school superintendent about what role the schools and police, and specifically police officers, may play in schools. What's the biggest takeaway for you about the MOU and its importance, and some of the things that you would offer to the community?
I think the biggest thing with the MOU is that it's a coordinated effort between us and the schools to create a safe and healthy environment in the schools. And I think that one of the things that we looked at when we were putting this together was that we're seeing a lot of things outside of school with certain individuals, and you're seeing some things inside the school with the individuals, and we weren't connecting the dots. And this allows us to have some communication, some open communication between us and the schools, so that we both understand what's going on inside the school and outside the school. And it's not done in a punitive manner. It's actually done so that we can kind of close the gap, and if there's an individual or student that's in need, that we get the appropriate resources for them working together.
Well, it's the right thing to do, and I'm glad that we're able to work together like that. So it's clear to me that I think the four of us, and certainly the chiefs, work closely together to promote student safety. But there's a bigger picture, and that's public safety in the town of Needham. Kate, you were talking just a little bit about firefighters being in Station 1, Station 2. However, there is a big initiative underway. There is actually later on this fall a vote in the town to support a public safety, new public safety facilities. So I want to spend some time talking about that project, what that's all about, and how that's important to both departments, and how that will impact public and school safety. So first of all, what's the project all about?
It's actually a 3-station project, and as you note, the community will be asked to vote on November 6th on the ballot as to whether this project moves forward. It's 3 stations. The fire station 1 in the square, which is attached to the police station, and then also Station 2, as we mentioned earlier, at the Heights. But the project also includes temporary relocation of both Station 2 and the police department to the Hillside School, another town-school collaboration, once the Hillside students move out over to the New Williams School. So our facilities are very old. They were built in the 30s and the 40s. And you can picture the police and fire station in the downtown on Chestnut and School Streets. It's a magnificent building if you think about built in 1931, where the country was at the time, and this was a real statement of what Needham wanted to be. It was a major community building. We've grown exponentially since then. We have a lot more staff. We have more vehicles. The vehicles are bigger. And we have a lot more calls. So the community has purchased around the station on Chestnut Street 6 parcels that we will be using for parking and also to expand the station. So that station will come down, and there'll be a new and improved public safety building with an expanded fire department apparatus bay. They'll have 4 bays instead of 3, and a modern police station. And I'm sure the chief will talk about some of the problems that we've had. We had tours all weekend of folks coming in, and it wasn't a plant that there was a barrel in the records room catching the rain. It wasn't even raining, so I don't know where it was coming from.
When it rains hard, the water comes through the ceiling, and it gathers in the lights, and it's over a lot of our IT equipment. So when we know we're going to get heavy rainfall, we have to put plastic bags over the IT equipment on the second floor in the records room just to protect that equipment.
So the other station at Station 2 used to be, or is in its existing state, is really a substation, but we'll be creating a full station there with another bay there, again, as we'll be able to operate a full-time ambulance now that we have the new staffing. And we're also creating, because of the topography there, a mechanics bay, so that we'll have space for our staff to work on the equipment. You can barely get our trucks in the station now. The notion of being able to open them is impossible, so they're often working outside, which is okay in October, not so much in February, when we'll be able to do that.
So Chief Condon, what are some of the needs at the existing fire station on Chestnut Street? It's crowded. You can't get all the apparatus in there, and times have changed. What do you see are some of the needs?
Yeah, well, times certainly have changed. When they built the building in 1930, 1931, we still had one piece of horse-drawn apparatus in that building.
Wow.
So things have changed. Trucks were so much smaller. We have a brush truck trying to come into the building. It literally has 1 or 2 inches on either side. They have to shut down the side view mirrors in order to get it in the building and to get it out. So that gives you an idea of the space needs for the apparatus alone. But the administration has grown tremendously in that period too. In 1931, the administration was the fire chief, and now there's support staff, there's emergency management staff, and fire inspectors and so forth. So there's a big need for administration room. Computer and technology infrastructure is either non-existent or there's wires hanging all over the place. It's a tough building. It's a great building. It lasted for a long, long time, but we've
Right.
just really outgrown it. Needham has outgrown it, and we see a tremendous amount of growth on the 128 belt currently and moving forward. So we really need to get a full-time ambulance down at Station 2, and there's no room there to do that. So that's part of the reason of having to do that project now at the same time. But I think the community will be well served with the new building for many, many, many years. And we're really looking forward to having it and to be able to work out of it. An awful lot of research has been done recently on firefighters and cancer. So the buildings now are built in a time period where that wasn't even discussed or even thought of. And so we have exhaust fumes getting up into living areas. Much like the police side, we have water dripping in and there's mold in there and so forth. The fitness area that the two departments share, and between us we probably have about 130 employees. The fitness room is probably maybe
It's no bigger than a regular office.
yeah, it's about the size of an office, and it's very, very cramped, and it wasn't designed for that, so that creates a health hazard in itself.
Well, and also I understand from you sharing with me previously that after a response, a fire response, there are some new protocols in, excuse me, in firefighters being appropriately, cleaned and making sure that their health is in check after an event, because we've learned a lot over the last 70 years or so about what appropriate safety is. I also understand that the building for both departments is going to provide an opportunity for training areas that, again, is incredibly important when I think about this community and public safety and school safety. I mean, I am a strong advocate for police and fire having the appropriate facilities they need to do the training they need so that they can be responsive to the community, the schools and homes and businesses as necessary. So that'll be another aspect of the project that will be important.
Yes, it will definitely. It's definitely important. And today when I left, we had officers doing taser training, and they were in the garage with mats from one of the schools. So if the officers fell down or they had to use some type of force, that they weren't hurt, because we're limited in what we can do training-wise, and it's an important aspect of the new building.
It's important, Kate, as you said, that this is the year of public safety in Needham, and I like that. It's absolutely critical that we really think about the needs of the community and certainly needs of police and fire, and this public safety initiative, the public safety buildings, I think, from my view as superintendent, are critical for the safety of the community, and in my role for the safety of our schools and our students. Kate and chiefs, can folks visit the existing stations? How does that work? What's if they want to in the next several weeks?
Absolutely. They could always call ahead and come, but we have 4 sessions scheduled for the month of October. There's 2 Thursdays from 6 to 7, and there's 2 Saturdays, both at Station 2 and at the station.
And those dates can be found on
the website, needhamma.gov. New police and fire station are under hot topics. It's easy. Just Google it. Yeah.
Okay. So then the big idea in this year of public safety is that on the November 6th ballot there'll be a question for the community to weigh in on around these new facilities. Just real quickly, what's the timeline? If the community votes to support the public safety facilities in November, So when does this all happen? How does it unfold?
Hillside School closes. We'll be working over there in the summer of 19, so next summer, getting the station, getting it ready to be the Fire Station 2. Fire Station 2 would move over there in October timeframe. They'd be there about 18 months. The move back would be about 2020. Police moves out about the same time frame. They'll be over there probably 6 to 9 months at the same time at the Hillside School together. So it's a 3-year project, really, start to finish. Maybe slightly longer, but it's a very big project. We will be achieving economies of scale because we're doing all at once. We'll have one contractor in charge of the whole project, overseeing it. That will help. One of the things that the contractor has told us is that if we don't fund it this year, it could be as much as 10% higher a year because of the way
The costs are
the costs-
escalating. And you're also taking advantage of the Hillside School. I mean, that's a nice, you mentioned partnership. I mean, you don't have to go out and lease space. You can use the existing space. I imagine there might be a couple of Hillside students who'd like to remain there and be schooled with the fire and then later the police, but they will be moving, we hope, to the new Sunita Williams School. Well, it's a neat partnership. And I think in this year of public safety, as you put it, Town Manager Fitzpatrick, I think that's what it's all about. That it's been my experience that the fire department, the police department, certainly your office, we work very closely and collaboratively to support and to ensure student safety and school safety. It's what we're all about, and I'm looking forward to learning more about the new public safety building and hoping that will be successful and a successful project for the community. So thanks for being here today.
Well,
Thank you.
Okay.
We hope to see you on the tour.
You will.